I'm Bill Carell, and I want to welcome you to another Lighting the Candle, Stepping Off into a World That Works, or Lighting the Candle, a World That Works. And so today we have Ken Caputo, we also have Lisa Sheehan, and then we have Vanessa Lewis. And we've been having a conversation having to do with conditioning, weight loss, and my experience. They've been generously listening to what I've been doing for the last 5 months. And Ken, you had really kind of an interesting way to put it all into 3 or 4 words. What is that?
Oh, so this is, I call it it's the becoming the navigator of your own life. And these are the daily practices that if you do as best you can, for even just for a few minutes a day, like you make this a focus,
Yes.
Pretty much whatever comes at you, you'll be able to deal with. So it's not about, withstanding the waves that crash down on us. It's learning to surf them, So it's like our ability to navigate in a crisis like we've all been in for the last few months. So, the 5 practices, one is move, which is just some type of exercise on a daily basis. It's not being sedentary. Think, something that involves neuroplasticity, whether it's learning something, reading something, painting, solving a crossword puzzle, whatever, right? Connect, which is about intentionally recognizing and reaching out in the relationships in your life. So, and that's with yourself, with others, and with whatever your higher power is. So it can be a gratitude practice, it can be a quick Facebook message to a friend, just letting them know that you're thinking of them, that kind of thing.
Sure.
Fuel, which is the one that a lot of people have really been intrigued by as I've been working with different people on this. And fuel is about not food as a thing that you consume unintentionally, but as a process of energizing the entire system so it can work. So if you have a Ferrari and you put crappy gas in it, doesn't matter that it's a Ferrari, it's not going to run, right? And then the last one is empower, which is that sense of being present, recognizing the value in the moment you're in, and having some basic practices, whether it's a little bit of breathing or, meditation or prayer or whatever it is. And just, when you're doing one of the other 4 things, it's eating, recognizing the value of the food you're bringing in, being present, putting your phone down when you're having a conversation like this. So for me, it's just every day I make sure that in some way I've practiced those 5 things and been doing it for almost 30 years now. And it's helped me when things went wrong unexpectedly. Those practices are kind of like, you practice in the dojo so that if you ever get attacked, your likelihood improves that you'll survive the attack. Starting martial arts after you get mugged doesn't help very much. So this is the practices you do every day that prepare you for the unknowns that life's going to throw at us. So that's it. Move, think, connect, fuel, empower. That's what Quester's Way was built on. Those five practices. The whole center was built around that.
Wonderful, Ken. Thanks for that contribution. Hey, Lisa, how are you doing today, and what's big for you on this wonderful Wednesday?
On this wonderful Wednesday, we are actually, we just printed our first anniversary edition of Epic. So we've been at it for a year. I should have the new version up on my wall, but I do not. That will be next week. Anyway, it's exciting and it's daunting and it's a little bit of everything. But once again, it's fun to get out there and meet people as we're delivering them, and then to gear up for the, it's always a cycle. So we're gearing up for the next issue already. But right now we're just in celebration mode of welcoming the first edition of the second year.
It's awesome. And I have to tell you, it's a personal pleasure of mine, to have been involved with you, to watch this happen. I don't know if the very first time was prior to August of last year. It seems like it was when you were building up to the point of really starting with your first issue. But also to be published in it and tell my little story, that was very cool. and I've had fun giving away the actual physical magazine to people. And I'm looking forward to the new one coming out so that I can get some more people interested up here in this neck of the woods. We have 2 universities nearby.
Yeah, I'll have to meet up with you again on that note. And Ken, I would love you to contribute as well if you could, even though maybe the 5 things that you just mentioned, like that whole.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
And then Vanessa, I'm after you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're talking. Yeah, I'm thinking about ideas every day.
Oh, good.
You're going to get great quality from either of these 2 folks, and I think you'll get great quality from Shelley too. I'll put in a plug for her.
Yes, I've reached out to Shelley as well, so I just did that. So Ken was my today.
Fantastic.
Be happy to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Vanessa, how are you doing over there? Are you comfortable speaking today, or are you more or less going to be a committed listener and pipe in every once in a while?
You know what? That literally is the call I was waiting for my dentist. I have to go.
How perfect is that? Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh no,
I think she said she was going to duck out to do that call, and then she'll pop back in.
So she's still connected. All right. So yeah, for those of you that don't know, she's actually had and unfortunately she's had a dental infection that really flared up last week, and they thought they did what they needed to do on Monday of last week, and so therefore a week's gone by and she's still having a problem with it. So the inquiring minds want to know, and that's what's going on with Vanessa. So my request today is that we do 2 things. That we wrap up at about 5 of 1. Lisa, you typically have something else to jump on. And the other thing is that I am going to self-monitor, and then you can monitor as well. But I'm going to suggest that we spend the next sort of 36 minutes with no reference to the outside world or current events. Does that work for you folks?
I live in that state most of the time, so that works for me.
Well, I'm actually carving this out as a state that I can go to in order to enjoy the benefits that you seem to be getting from it, Ken. So with that said, I think what we could do is maybe just share some philosophical background. Lisa, I know you've spent a lot of time, looking into mindfulness training, listening to people, and that you have a lot of respect for the spoken and the written word being able to create worlds. And also to talk about possibilities of what is possible if people are learning to train themselves with a certain kind of an attenuation, if you will. If you are looking for something that's very powerful and positive, you have a better chance of finding it than you do if you're just kind of going through life, taking things as they come. What would you want to share about that today?
I mean, ideally, I would hope that people wouldn't have to wait for something tragic or extreme to happen to them to start looking into like the why am I here, or more importantly, why are we here?
Sure.
Kind of scenario. And as far as I have studied all different things, and listening, of course, is one of the key attributes to life, and community. I think is very important. I was just reading a book about how isolation is so detrimental to us as a society. And I think what's happening now is just adding to that. So I think it's important to reach out. But I'm constantly learning, and I'm always questioning things, because there are things that I accepted as truth, and then I have come to learn, especially recently, that it's not actually truth. It's somebody's version of the truth, but it's so. And I keep landing on things that are part of my truth, which is fun to discover. As long as you're living along in certain ways of belief. Like I always thought I wasn't a morning person until I started doing the Miracle Morning, and then found out that I appreciate mornings better. And to have the full use of the whole day instead of just whenever you wake up kind of thing. And how interesting it is, and I'm sure Ken knows too, like to tell, you could tell yourself to wake up at 5. I don't need an alarm usually anymore. So it's kind of interesting in that respect too, how you can train your mind to, and again, to look for positive things. I try not to live in a negative world. I try to have people around me not live in that negative world, but I can't control other people. But I look for positive things all the time, and I'm reading books to figure out how I can stay more positive. So if that's learning something new, which is one of my current things, and I love to read, so I'm constantly reading. But I think finding your own truth within community is probably I could say that's like in a sentence is kind of a big goal.
Sure. And do you have any recent either writings that you've read or a book or something on tape, a book, an Audible or something of that nature that you would recommend that Ken and I should take a look at?
Well, I love Eckhart Tolle, so The Power of Now and New World, but I've also what's the other ones? I can get one that I'm reading. I'm doing a second round with it because it was about isolation, or the hell we live in kind of thing.
Yes.
Not a nice title, but and I've been reading a lot of Black allyship books too. So My Grandmother's Hands and White Supremacy and Me. And what is the other one? And then some of the women like
rolled off of your tongue. Supremacy and Me.
And then some books that are Untamed by what's her name, Glennon Doyle, I think is her name. But it's more like women empowerment kind of books. And what was oh my goodness, this is horrible that I can't think of the books I'm reading. But I'll go get the one that I'm reading and can pipe up.
What we'll do is we'll allow you to run and do what you got to do, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ken because if I know anybody that reads or listens to more books on tape than you, Ken, they don't come to mind. Okay. And I think you're my superior when it comes to both having the intent and actually getting it done to really expand your mind listening to great people.
Yeah, it's funny for me. That's been the think, which is just each day opening yourself up to what you don't know.
Right.
And, and just becoming aware of how much we don't know, I think is a powerful thing. So, and we live in this incredible world right now where, sorry, I was looking for the name of an author just to make sure I had it right. So I can give you guys a couple of recommendations, but just, there's so much access to minds that have, just done so much work and created such interesting things. And I think the balance to it, to keep it on not the outside world but the inside, is bringing in information and then becoming self-aware enough that you can ask the question of yourself, is this true? Is this true for me? Or if this was true for me, what would that look like? So, and just being open to it. So a lot of the things that I found value in are really just kind of the exploration of various philosophies that at their core, they're all really kind of saying the same thing. So, but you look at how they were expressed through that culture, or whether it was an Eastern mind that it was coming through, or a Western mind, or, all that kind of stuff. Yes. So, so the recommendations I would have right now, The Unfettered Soul by Michael Singer.
Love
is, and it's a great, that one, and the other one would be by Benjamin Huff, which is The Tao of Pooh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was listening to that one. They have the audio version.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, and they're great. They're great practical kind of introductions to the more Eastern spirituality and philosophy, philosophical approach. So those are really, really cool. And then on the Western side, I've always been fascinated, especially by Stoicism. And a guy named Ryan Holiday, he wrote 3 books. The Obstacle is the Way, Stillness is Key was the third one. I forgot what the second one was, but his name is Ryan Holiday. So, and if you look him up, you'll get all 3 books. Yeah, I can't remember what the third one is, but basically, he's, for me, I'm very, very interested in being in the world, and being an active participant in the world. So, not just studying it from afar, I want to be in the game playing, right? So, and these are all, like Michael Singer, he went into the woods and studied yoga and did all these things, and then built a $1 billion software company from the woods, and taught people how to bring their own spirituality to whatever work they were doing. So this isn't someone that just meditated on a mountaintop. He actively participated in the world, so that was very fascinating. Ryan Holiday's work is like that too. It's how can you take these practices and find, ways that they can be beneficial to you and everyone around you in your current environment, So those are be the ones that I would recommend. And, and it's interesting if you just set a goal, like, especially now with audiobooks and, being tablets and everything, like 25 years ago, I set a goal to just try to read a book a week. And pretty much have done that. So that's 25 years times 50. It's a big number, but it just doesn't feel like a lot. And some are more useful than others, but it just accumulates. Yeah. So again, just being prepared. And then you have things to access at a chamber event or in a conversation with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So let me welcome Vanessa back again. And Vanessa, you can either give us a progress report, or I can update you on what we're talking about and the requests that I put out. What would you like to hear, or what would you like to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Update me on what the subject is about today, please.
I made 2 requests. The first one is that we complete by 5 of 1, and that the other one was that during that period of time that we not bring into the conversation anything about or referring to factual current events out there in that world.
Okay, because we're talking about a world that works, and it's not exactly working out there right now.
Well, it may or may not be. If we were talking about that, I'm sure we could get pretty deep into, what evidence do you have? But
no, that's
yeah, the lightness of being comes from talking about, instead of what's wrong and how to fix it, but it's standing in possibility. What is possible? You have to be in a clearing in order to have this thing called possibility. And if there's something else there that you're changing, either making it bigger, faster, or better, then it's actually referencing the past, and it has nothing to do with a new construct that we're calling possible.
Yeah.
And so, along
doing
those
introductions.
Yeah, sure. So we're essentially talking about any books we've been reading lately, or anything philosophical that you'd like to add to the conversation that would bring benefit to the rest of us.
Yeah, sure. So, and are we introducing ourselves as well, or do we all know who we are? That's
I think you should.
We kind of skipped that. Yeah.
But yes.
But in case you forgot, because it's been a few weeks now.
Who are you, by the way?
What's that?
Who are you, by the way?
Who are you? I know. What is that funny phone icon down there on the screen?
I like that.
Yeah, no, I've been MIA a little bit. I had to work with a dentist on some dental surgery, and then there was some complications. And I the most recent thing. So all night, all night last night, especially, I was reading just online about antibiotics and the amazing antibiotic resistance that's almost becoming a public health concern in today's world. But I know we're not talking about what's going on in today's world, so I'm completely fine with that. I'm pulling up a seat with you all, but that's what's really been on my mind. There was antibiotic prescribed. I'll just tell you briefly, and it worked. But then as soon as I stopped taking it, the infection came back. So I'm like, that's interesting. And then I was prescribed another one that was very much a drug. The other one kind of reminded me of a like a vitamin, you know, and it's penicillin, so it's sort of natural, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then I get this, you know, I buy this other prescription as directed by my doctor, and I open it up and it's these bright blue pills. And I'm just thinking, and then of course if you ever want to make yourself feel absolutely horrible, if you have any sort of an ailment, go on WebMD.com, go on any sort of, you know, internet, Google it, and you'll feel like you're dying. You know, you feel like you have to go to the emergency room. So anyway, so I didn't take the dose as prescribed when I was supposed to yesterday, and I called the dentist today, and so that's where I was at, was waiting for that call. And so they prescribed me something different, which I might like because it's closer to the natural side. So, and then I'll just back up a little bit. So first of all, I'm backing way, way up, because when I had to drop out for that call before, I wanted to say congratulations to Lisa and her amazing publication on your anniversary.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome. And I'm glad to be a part when that happens. And I did read Bill's article. That was amazing. Why should I be surprised? And
you're too kind.
And then I'll bring Ken into this. So Ken, one of the things I really enjoy with you on these calls is that just about every call, you always have a book or some quote from a book that you've read. And now I know why. It's because you had just said earlier that you made that goal to read one book a week. And I'm with you there. I made that goal a couple of years ago to read. I think it was like 2 books a week. No competition here, but it was just in my case, probably more for my business. And accomplishing that. And I actually trained myself, as you may have as well, to read faster. And so for me, that was very helpful. And I agree with you. Once you have that knowledge, you always have it. So it helps at cocktail parties. In my case, or you said chambers of commerces, it helps with having that information on the tip of your tongue. Just having general knowledge is wonderful. What else is this? Oh, but as a writer, yeah, I have to have all sorts of information. So my big thing, what I'm reading right now, is how to be a conscious eater. And I know I'm talking to the right crowd here, because you guys were talking about intermittent fasting before we went record. And this came out by Sophie Egan just recently. And it's how to be a conscious eater, making food choices that are good for you, others, and the planet. So for me, that's right up my alley. And it talks about the way it's categorized is awesome. Stuff that comes from the ground, stuff that comes from animals, stuff that comes from factories, stuff that's made in restaurant kitchens. And it even talks about antibiotics in here a little bit. Mm-hmm. How they're sometimes in our animals and sometimes in our water, and we build up resistance that way. But yeah, so anything. And then the other one I was reading was the naturopathic way, something like that. I don't know where I put it, but so just the whole thing about natural medicine. Mm-hmm. I think that's just really coming to the forefront now for more and more people.
Yep.
So let me ask a pointed
cool.
question, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
Is there a book or a study or a series that you could point to and say, that was actually kind of a fountainhead or a watershed moment in your life, that it actually helped define the life that you'd had up to that point, and then gave you a field to play in afterwards?
Are you specifically referring to like me having an interest in sustainability?
No, I'm actually interested in the whole life experience, and almost everyone I know they were happy going along doing a routine, and then all of a sudden they got more information from somebody or something or some book or what have you. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if something like that occurred for you, Vanessa.
I'll have to think on that, Bill, because yeah, I'm sure it has, but I have to think about an exact moment like that.
Sure. Ken, was there one like that for you?
Yep. Very, very clear, very distinctive. It was when I made the decision to basically leave the trajectory of my life and be crazy and go teach martial arts for a living. And someone who is mentoring me at the time, he recommended a book to me. And I had not had any experience. I'd never even been taught like how to set a goal. Like I'd never even heard of that. I was in my early 20s. So he was introducing me to the world of personal development and success and that kind of stuff. So, and his comment was, I'm going to recommend a book to you, and I bet you won't buy it. And if you do, I bet you won't read it. So of course I was like, oh no, there's a challenge. So I bought it and read it. And the book was The Magic of Thinking Big. I believe the author is Jeff Schwartz, maybe. I mean, this is, years ago.
It sounds good to me.
Yep. And then that led to Dennis Waitley and Psychology of Winning, and Brian Tracy and the Psychology of Success, and Tony Robbins and all the work that he was doing. And it was like a floodgate opened. And, so it started with personal development, and then it went into education, and then business and marketing, and Seth Godin and all these other, but it was a distinct moment in time. And it was a book that had been available to me for Lord knows how many years already. And it was the conscious choice to, buy it, open it, read it, and then practice it. And then that triggered everything else. That was the first domino.
Yeah. Awesome. Lisa, how about you?
I often go back and remember, because for some reason, I decided that, many years ago, that money would solve all issues. So I read a little book called Conversations with Millionaires. And one of the millionaires was Jack Canfield.
Yes.
And that led me to The Secret. And then, it just kind of tumbled into spiritual and motivational everything. So I'm sure he would be thrilled to know that that's what, because it's a tiny little book. I mean, it's not even, I'm sure it was probably a bestseller at the time, but it was many years ago now. So it was an interesting read, but I can definitely, and I've got books for all different, that, it was a trajectory to different parts of my life. Like The Shack, which is a fiction book, was responsible for catapulting me into my spiritual world. And then The Miracle Morning, which I've mentioned, started me on my daily practice world. And I forgot about my favorite book right now, which is Essentialism.
Yeah.
Oh, I just finished reading that one like a couple months ago. That was excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my new.
I pulled a lot from that.
Yeah, because it's like, and what I was talking about, when you finally hear your truth, like this guy was writing my story, because, discernment is one of my favorite things. And then not focusing on so many things at once, it just made so much sense to me. So I'm glad you read it too. But so,
yeah, no, that was really good, and that was really helpful.
Yes. So those are the ones that stand out right now at a pop quiz.
It's a little bit different for me, simply because I was an avid reader until probably 7th grade. And I mean, I would read more than a book a day during the summertime, up through that period of time. And my story is I would read several books more than once. And so we had this big thing that happened. I gave a book report in the 7th grade, and, you know, I actually did read the book again. It probably took me 2 hours start to finish. And it wasn't something that I had any recollection of ever having done a book report before. And clearly the language was different. However, my English teacher had a 5x8 card that had all of the book reports that I had done in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So I actually did this book report and on the same book that I had given a book report in the 5th grade. Now, the book that I read was Gone with the Wind. And so the book report that I wrote in the 7th grade was from the perspective of a 7th grader. But since there was no record of the book report that I did in the 5th grade, my English teacher gave me an F. And he also called me a cheater in front of the rest of the class. And he also had a parent-teacher conference with my mother and father and made them come to the school so that he could tell them about that. At which my mother said, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Standish, but quite frankly, I watched Billy reread that book again. I watched him do the book report. I don't know what the problem is here. He said, well, it's just not honest. And and my dad said, are there any books that you've read more than once? And he said, well, yeah, in fact, there are. And I said, did they mean different things? He said, did they mean different things to you when you read them? And he said, well, in fact, they did. And my dad said, well, are you going to let the grade stand? He said, I will, because I've got my principles. And so I learned, in that brief thing, with the mentality of a 7th grader, that if you read books, it's a dangerous thing and people get upset. That was the decision that I made. Now, I didn't really fully realize that decision until I was in my late 20s. And when I finally did realize that, I had basically worked with brute force to try to mimic all of the mentors that I had around me. And I had a lot of people that put their arms over my shoulder and said, Bill, if you want to progress, then you can do this, you can do that. So the first book that I read that I want to say really made a huge difference for me was Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
Yep.
I read that cover to cover, and then I thought I really didn't understand it, and then I read it cover to cover again. And then I started with the Nightingale Conant books on cassette tape series.
Yeah, I had so many of those. That's awesome.
I will bet. And I had progressed in management to the point where I was in middle management, and to have the kind of job that I wanted to have, I had commutes that were up to an hour a day each way. So I would play these things in my car going back and forth to work, and that just opened things up for me again. And the E-Myth, one of the ones that I would say was a watershed tape to listen to is called Peak Performance. And what they were talking to is the whole issue of people's beliefs being self-limiting and people's undistinguished beliefs, those things that they don't know that they believe, being the most self-limiting. And so they went through the whole neuro-linguistic programming conversation, and then they also talked about how the Russians used these techniques in terms of training Olympic athletes. They would lie to weightlifters and tell them there was less weight on the bar than there actually was. Mm-hmm. And these guys were pumping up 15, 18 pounds more than the world record in practice. And they found that once they told them, they could never lift that weight again. Yeah. But once they learned that, they didn't use that approach going forward. So this came up for me recently. I mean, it took me all the way back to being maybe 27, 28 years old. I recently was on a call and watched there's about a 10-minute segment. I believe the movie is called Facing the Giant, which is a book about a high school football team that's never really won a game, and they were quite certain they never would. And the coach actually works with one of the guys who is the informal leader on the football team, and he says, we're going to do the death crawl to the 50-yard line. Are you familiar with this?
The video. I've seen the
I know
video.
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So the long and the short of it is he's how you do this is you put a blindfold on, and then you get somebody to ride your back, and you crawl on all fours and not let your elbows or your knees touch the ground until you've hit your mark. And so, as you can imagine, the coach is interacting with this guy, screaming at him, and the guy's saying, have I got to the 50-yard line yet? And he said, no, if I tell you got there, you're going to quit, and et cetera, et cetera. So they're doing this.
Yeah.
And he said, don't you dare quit on yourself. Don't you dare quit on yourself. You got this. You got this. Keep going. And then all of a sudden, they're past the 50-yard line. And now it's getting interesting to the rest of the team, and they all come up and are standing on the sideline. And the next thing you know, they're all cheering, and away they go. And finally, the guy falls down. He says, that's all I can do. And he's in the other end zone. He went 100 yards just simply by somebody saying, don't let me down. I'm not going to let you down. And there was this contract between the two of them that created this extraordinary performance. Now, to a lesser degree, I have to give credit to anything that I've ever accomplished to somebody who was older, wiser, better, who gave me the confidence to continue when it didn't look like it was ever going to work. Yeah. And so that all started with, Napoleon Hill. And if anybody wants to see, my collection of they're so beautiful. They look gorgeous in the bookcase. And now we have these little tiny things that have a CD or DVD in them. Well, anyhow, I really appreciate everybody, empathically sharing, your energy with us today. I can feel it definitely from all three of you. And I really hope that I rose to the occasion and gave you back what you were giving me. So
Definitely.
with that said, anybody have any parting thoughts? Lisa?
Go forth and read.
Okay, let me write that down.
You can quote me.
Awesome. Ken?
That's great.
Mr. Caputo?
Oops. Oh, me? Let me see. Actually, something that probably would have been great if you had heard it's a quick Albert Einstein story, talking about rereading books. And, he had a professor come up to him and say, your students are onto you. And he said, what do you mean? I mean, I'm making up the conversation, but basically the professor said, every year you give the exam and the questions are the same. They figured it out. They know you got to change the questions up. You got to change your exam. And he said, no, I'm not doing that. He says, well, why in the world not? He said, because the questions don't matter. The answers keep changing. Yes. And, and I know like every few years I reread all of Jim Collins' work, Good to Great, Great by Choice. And I swear it's a different book because I'm a different human.
Yeah.
So rereading them, depending on where you are, it's just, there's this experiential evolution that occurs. So it's, your answers will always be changing, so just be aware of that and have fun with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Ken. Vanessa?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to speak out of my personal experience these past 2 weeks with the, just not feeling right about taking a certain drug, and just taking the time to talk to my pharmacist, do my own research, and then, go and actually seek out and call my dentist and talk to him. And so then I just got a text that I got another prescription in for something different. So I just want to say that I think in general, I think if patient advocacy is really important. Just to one of the greatest things I think with when we're healing is just feeling like we're empowered and we can choose our treatments along the way, to a certain extent, or at the very least, if we don't understand something, we shouldn't have to take a pill if we don't feel like we can't understand what it's fully for. If we have questions about it, we shouldn't ever feel forced into any sort of treatment. I mean, unless it's life-threatening, of course. But so yeah, it's not a profound quote, but certainly not at all. But yeah, just patient advocacy is important. And remember, as a patient, you can advocate for yourself, and even just as simple as doing some of your own research, maybe choosing a different treatment method, and talking with your doctor if you have any questions. So, it's more like a PSA.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
I love it. And I got to tell you, from my own personal experience, not only should you, but you must. Mm-hmm. If you don't advocate for yourself, there's nobody else who will, because especially with painkillers and that sort of thing, in the medical community, you have to ask for them. You're the one who has to initiate. So I think that's great wisdom off of your recent experience, and I thank you for it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to wrap by saying, I still love you, and I think I always will, and that's where I'm sitting right now. So thanks again for being here and having a conversation, and let's continue to light the candle, and let's continue to step into it and off of and into and whatever a world that works. All right. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.